Hey everybody, welcome back to a very special episode of Backlog Banter. And the reason it's special is because for once in our goddamn blue moons, outside of Mario content, we're talking about something topical.
That's
And
true.
that is, folks, let me tell you something that's soon to fucking change with the next game review we're doing. But for in the moment, for right now, we're talking about something very recent. So recent, in fact, it broke mere hours ago.
Yeah,
That, of course, is the fact that Tetsuya Nomura gave a statement that reads to me as one large falsity.
I
But
agree.
the gist of the statement is that the Kingdom Hearts core games, being pretty much the story so far, everything included there. So Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 remakes, as well as the Birth by
All
Dream
the
Drop Distance
all the
remake,
different shit.
basically
There's
all of them except for maybe Recoded. All of those games that are on PS4 and Xbox One, they're not coming to Switch.
mhm.
Officially fucking came out and said it hard and fast, they're not coming. And the reason he cited, now, Tucker, I want you to fucking buckle yourself in for this. I want you I want you to put on a fucking latex covering, right? To protect yourself from the horse
Okay.
shit that's about to be thrown in your
All right.
direction. The reason cited is that there are technical difficulties
Yep.
bringing these games to Switch.
Hmm.
Now, Tucker, I want to talk about this as a small unit for a moment, but what I really want to talk about is third party on Switch as a whole.
Yeah.
Because I think this is largely emblematic of the larger trends. And what I mean to say is, obviously, what Tambu Tutada is saying is not true.
Yeah. No, that. I mean, it's obvious that's just a flat out lie because most of those games are what PS2, PS3,
Well,
PSP.
well,
Like,
here's the thing. I was willing to give him a little bit of leeway for one key reason, because the original Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 are PS2 games, but they were brought first to PS3, and that's
okay,
really weird architecture.
sure.
So it's possible that maybe the PS4 iterations of these games couldn't be brought over one to one. So then maybe they would have to look back at the cell architecture stuff, and maybe that was giving them troubles. And of course, Kingdom Hearts 3 is a very graphically intensive game, so there are reasons why technical limitations could prevent a lot of these games from coming to Switch. But they're also on Xbox now,
Yeah.
and I think
That's
that's a big canary in the coal mine, and that says to me that yeah, whatever weird architecture they worked on in the past is no longer a problem. Clearly these games can be very flexibly brought to different ecosystems,
mhm.
which just makes this statement ring really hollow.
Yeah.
Really fucking
So
hollow.
for me, the weirdest part about this is not just that they came out and said it at all, which is weird. I mean, they could just not say anything and that would give them better graces. But the fact that they came out and said that it's that the problem is the technology, where Square Enix is they're a large company. I don't know if you are aware of that, but they have a lot of money
Hmm.
and they make a lot of video games. And the fact that it has been ported to Xbox, I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think the ca- supposedly calculated marketing decision behind this was? Why do you think the PR team was like, "Hey, let's come out and say we can't port them because it's too technologically difficult," when there's very little evidence that that could even be true?
Here's what I think is the real answer. This wasn't Square Enix PR talking. This was Tetsuya Nomura, who was
Okay.
giving an interview about Kingdom Hearts Memory of Melody. This to me
Yeah.
reads as Tetsuya Nomura was asked a question and he didn't know what to say, so this is what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be more an issue, not specifically technologically, the Switch isn't powerful enough. Maybe it's an issue of allocating the resources to make it happen. Maybe that's the technical
Sure.
thing he's
Okay.
talking about.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Well.
he literally was like, honestly, shit, they just asked me. I'm tired. I was doing cocaine last night. I got that Final Fantasy VII remake money. I was fucking some Japanese prostitute, and I don't know how to answer this question right now, so I'm just gonna say, yeah, sorry, it's technical difficulties. But
It says the quote is technologically difficult, or the
right.
translated quote, whatever.
I mean, I'm not one to speak on technologically difficult issues, considering I can't connect to the fucking Zoom half the time I try to record. But the fact is that that statement obviously rings hollow.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to address in the larger picture. The reason this frustrates me not only is the fact that I'd like to play these games on Switch,
I
because
would like to play them because I have not played them.
right, I'm a fairly fair weather Kingdom Hearts fan. I've dabbled in a lot of them, but I've never really devoted my time to them.
Yeah.
And I've seen the store so far, which is an obscene fucking deal. That's
Yeah, it's a
literally
crazy collection.
it's every Kingdom Hearts game that's on PS4 in one bundle for like $50. It goes on sale often, and I've been holding out specifically because I want these games to come to Switch. And after playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm really interested to play more of Square's action RPGs and really get into them.
Hmm.
Here's what I want to say. Melody of Memory is coming out on Switch. I guarantee you it's going to sell very well on Switch.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you next year, Nomura and Square Enix are going to be singing a very different tune.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And that was the first thing that I thought of when I was coming up to this whole topic about it being technologically difficult. And there's no way that that's actually true, because we've had Wolfenstein 2 and Doom and
Witcher. I mean,
presumably
Witcher's
Doom Eternal, yeah, and Witcher 3, yeah, all running on Switch. And these games are not as hard to. There's no way they're as hard to port as those games.
Dragon Quest 11S.
Yeah, but shit, you made me lose my train of thought. But is that the Switch is not the most powerful thing, but these are also not the most powerful games. And the fact that, well, that didn't make much sense, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you mean.
I completely lost my train
Here's
of
the
thought when
problem.
you
Let
told
me
me
take
about
this
Witcher.
stick for a second because I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Or
I
maybe
was
this
still
isn't
in
what you're
time to
getting
make it
at.
sound like I know what I'm talking about.
But I think the overarching issue here is that we're far past the point where, as Nintendo fans, we need to be held hostage to get games on Switch.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, never mind. I got my train. My train is back on
Yeah.
its goddamn tracks. So what I was going to say is the fact that we have heard these things before from companies saying that they are not sure
Yes.
about putting games on Switch and they don't know that they can handle it. But the fact is that Switch games almost always have a boost in sales. Indie games have said that, not all the third-party games, but a lot of third-party games have said that when they put their game on Switch, they get a huge boost in sales, and Switch numbers are particularly high, especially attach rate-wise. And Square Enix is a company that has they've got games on the Switch, so I'm not exactly sure what it is that is causing them for this particular collection or this particular series to not believe that Nintendo fans want this content, because that is just not true. Nintendo fans want these are some of the most non-Nintendo or they're most of the most Nintendo non-Nintendo games. Like Kingdom Hearts feels like it could fit perfectly on the Switch, and the fans want it. So I'm really not sure. This is a whole hullabaloo.
It's frustrating because back in 2017 we saw Capcom do this with Street Fighter 2
Mhm.
Go Fuck Yourself edition, which I
Mhm.
bought because I wanted more Capcom games on the system, and we got more Capcom. Goddamn fucking everything Capcom puts out gets on here one way or another. You can play Resident Evil 7 on your Switch in Japan
Kind of,
through cloud
yes.
streaming. The point is, you'll find a way when the sales figures are there. EA just completely fucking ate crow and like, yeah, now we're bringing 12 games to the Switch in the next 18 months or something.
Exactly. And I think that's the example I was thinking of, like big companies who are, on the fence about it because maybe the Wii U wasn't exactly what they wanted, but the Switch is not that, and it's going to sell. So
And the reason it's going to sell, and the reason we see such incredible figures, like I think it was actually just this morning, CD Projekt's IR data came out, and there you can see on a graph the spike that Witcher 3 sales got on Switch, and the studio that ported that, which I believe is Saber and CD Projekt, have said that those sales are very strong. The fact is, and the reason, if I was a third party, I would fucking get any XDev team I could possibly get to port my game to Switch, is that a lot of stuff doesn't come over.
yeah.
When Cold War comes out, I'll be playing that on PS4 because I can't play it on Switch. So many third-party games don't come over, so the ones that do feel like events.
Yeah.
And
That's a
Kingdom
good point.
Hearts is in a position where it's not Kingdom Hearts 3. I totally get not being able to bring Kingdom Hearts 3 over. Kingdom Hearts 3 is a beautiful game. It's a wonderful video game. I don't even know why I said that. Never mind. Kingdom Hearts 3 is a video game you can play with your hands. I played it for 20 hours and I looked at myself and I was like, why am I playing this instead? Here's the thing. I want to like Kingdom Hearts more than I actually do, and I want these games on Switch so I can give them a proper shot.
Yeah. Same
But
here.
the point is, not only would these games sell well, not only are they not cutting edge to the point where it'd be overly difficult to bring them, but Kingdom Hearts has a lineage with Nintendo. Kingdom Hearts had 3 fully exclusive Kingdom Hearts games. Those now 4 actually that have been brought over to various systems, various permutations. There's a GBA version of Chain of Memories. There was 358 Days Over 2. there was Recoded, and then there was Dream Drop Distance. In various ways, sometimes as cutscene movies, sometimes as full remakes that have migrated away, but the point is there's a lineage here.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we're getting Melody of Memory on Switch proves that that lineage is important to Square Enix to some extent still.
Yeah.
And considering how closely they worked with Nintendo on Octopath Traveler and Dragon Quest XI-S, and bringing more Final Fantasy games to Switch than I could possibly comprehend or ever need, it just baffles and frustrates me to see companies continue in 2020 to give Nintendo fans just the tip when they know that the money is there to go fucking whole hog into the ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Third-party games on Switch have always been an interesting thing to me. If you asked me in 2017 about any game that I wanted to play, I would have said that I would not play it anywhere but Switch. I was fully into that. I bought Doom on Switch, which is a good time. I do think that that's a good port. But over the years, since the novelty of my Switch has worn off and I've played dozens and dozens and dozens of games on it, I've become less. Third-party ports have become less appealing to me. I'm not in the majority for that, I don't think. Like, I know people buying Witcher 3, people buying Wolfenstein 2. Obviously, those ports sold very well. But when I see games that are available all over, if they're ports of an older game, a big older game, I would rather just wait for them and to go on sale and buy them on my PS4. Yeah, but everyone, they can still hear me. But I think that's what it comes down to for me, is that there's certain games that I would like to play on Switch, even if they are just a sort of crappy port. But overall, third-party ports, I feel like I would rather just play the superior version on my PC or my PS4. And maybe that's what they're thinking, is that won't sell well, but I really don't think I'm in the majority for that.
I think you're in a minority in some respects. I think from a base level, I prefer to play third-party games on Switch because I prefer handheld gaming. It's just more conducive to my lifestyle and more conducive to the way I play. So I will take the hit to fidelity to get the handheld experience. That's why I really champion and had an amazing time with the Outer Worlds on Switch earlier this year, even though it literally looks like the game was etched into a fucking tableau made out of Vaseline.
Yeah.
And then there's the more impressive ports like The Witcher that I think fidelity you can notice a drop, but stand toe to toe with what we have on other consoles. And I think the Wolfenstein games look excellent on the platform. So there's a base level there, but then there's just a surrounding fucking malaise of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
The pricing structures are ridiculous.
Yeah.
The late releases are ridiculous. The fact that we still don't even know when Doom Eternal is coming is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. The fact that we continue to get runarounds from companies like Square Enix is ridiculous. And it's clear that there's a market incentive to bring these games to the platform because they sell incredibly well. And I always chip in. I put my money where my mouth is. I want more of these games. I bought The Witcher. I bought Wolf 2. I bought Youngblood. I bought The Elder Worlds. I bought Doom. Well, I actually got a review code for The Elder Worlds because I'm kind of a big deal. But the point is, I've played these games. I've engaged with them. I've shown that this is a platform where I want high fidelity Western third-party experiences. And other companies or do the same, and they see sales figures that show that they want to engage. But there's just this fucking runaround that feels unnecessary and gets to my central contention for this discussion, that I don't think third-party support on Switch is good.
Yeah,
I think it's actually bad.
Yeah.
Do you want me to elaborate, or do you want to hop in there?
I don't know if I have too much to say about that, which, it seems to be somewhat of a trend when you throw a topic at me. I don't really feel like I'm prepared to talk about it, but I have played a good amount of third-party games on Switch, but on the whole, and I think what I was getting at earlier, I think you're right. I might not think that overtly, but I do think that you're correct. Is that even these games that are available on Switch, I don't really want to play there, and I think that's a testament to the fact that the games that I want to play on Switch, or rather play on Switch, such as Persona, such as trying out Kingdom Hearts, aren't there, which is strange. We get a weird mishmash of games that are I'm glad they're on the platform, but they're not really ones I would prefer to play on there. But then the ones that I do want to just aren't. And I'm not exactly sure, obviously it's a bunch of different companies that are choosing whether or not their games get ported, but it's a weird system that they have.
It's a weird amalgamation, and I think that is the one positive I will leverage in the direction of the third-party games. I've found a lot of new favorite experiences. Like favorites of all time through what third-party support we have gotten. LA Noire is now one of my favorite games of all time. That's a top 10 game for me. But I wouldn't have played it had it not come to Switch. Same with Wolfenstein 2. Those two
Mhm.
are huge examples of games that I wouldn't have played otherwise, which makes it all the more frustrating for me that the third-party support, in my opinion, is so bad. And the reason it's bad is because good third-party support is like good editing in a movie. You don't notice it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
My point is, a game doesn't get announced and you scratch your head wondering, is that coming to my PS4?
Yeah.
That's good third-party support. No company other than Nintendo has to have the conversation of whether or not the system has a good third-party support
Yep.
in relation to its other
I
platforms.
don't think any other like publishers in history have done that. I mean, it really is just. I mean, maybe you think back to like the original Xbox when that was first getting started, and people didn't know if it was going to be
Even the
a standalone thing. But
even
now
the
that we're on
original
Switch,
Xbox leveraged partnerships to get important games on the platform. GTA 3, Vice City San Andreas were temporarily exclusive to that platform. They got Knights of the Old Republic. They got a lot of games that define that generation on their platform.
yeah,
Now, I mean, the PS Vita has had problems with third-party support, right? There are examples of other people having issues,
sure,
but it's
yeah,
never with your flagship device. Because your flagship device should be a well-rounded ecosystem where everybody can find games to engage with. And it's just frustrating to see people say that in relation this is good third-party support because yeah, you know what, in relation to the Wii U it's fucking bonkers third-party support. But you want to know how many third-party games there are on the Wii U? Like maybe 8.
yeah,
Here's the thing: Nintendo, until they start releasing devices at power parity with their contemporaries, they're going to have issues. So what they can do instead, now I gotta, my mic is on it, this is my GameCube. Nintendo, are you familiar with the Capcom 5?
I have no idea what that means.
The Capcom 5, I'm going to put this back down so I can set my microphone back down. The Capcom 5 was a partnership Nintendo had with Capcom to bring 5 games, including Resident Evil 4, to GameCube exclusively.
Okay,
The GameCube was an instance of Nintendo not having third-party support. In parity, it had more, but still, in parity, it was lacking a lot of the heavy hitters. What Nintendo did instead was compensated by going to teams like Capcom and saying, look, we will do what it takes to get you to bring games to the GameCube. And they
sure.
did, and eventually those games migrated off of GameCube,
Hmm.
came to PS2, went to PC. But the fact is, Nintendo was aggressive to bring games to the GameCube. But I don't
Sure.
see Nintendo moving aggressively here. They'll do partnerships here and there and promote some of the biggest titles, but Nintendo should be going to Square Enix and saying, no, you are going to bring Kingdom Hearts to Switch, and if you need an X-Dev team, we will find you one.
Yeah.
Because this adds so much value to the ecosystem, and it makes Nintendo look better. Nintendo looks really weak when Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2 are technically impossible to bring to their console.
Yeah. Look, so good looking. Well, I did not form a sentence there, but looking through and listening to what you just talked about with good third party support, bad third party support. I was thinking back to my opinions on the Switch early on, where I felt like, wow, there's a lot of really cool third party games coming to it, and that was back when I would, if you would ask me, I would have said that third party support was great because I was comparing it to the Wii U. And looking at it now, I'm not as pleased with it, or I wouldn't say it's as great as I would used to say, but I do think that it is quite a bit better. And my thing is that while I'm not finding games like LA Noire or Wolfenstein 2 like you are with these new third party experiences that are coming to Switch, the Switch is getting a lot of ports of fantastic third party games. If I look
Yes.
through I'm looking at my top 100 favorite games of all time. A lot of these games I played on my PC, on my PS4, on other consoles, but they're now available on Switch. If I were to just have gotten a Switch and could play all these, I can probably play over half, or maybe 2/3 of my top 100 games of all time on Switch, and that is Minecraft, that is Overwatch, BioShock, Ori and the Blind Forest, Cuphead, all these games that I absolutely loved, and I would have loved to have played on Switch when I first did, but I didn't get that chance because they came later. So it's the later part that makes it feel not as impactful, but I do think that the third-party support is there. It's just not in necessarily the big new games that we people are craving.
I think that's a really important point, and I think that highlights the strength of the third-party library on Switch in the sense that this is Nintendo beginning to rebuild bridges.
Yeah.
The fact that Bethesda's bringing games over, the fact that there's the 2K stuff like you're talking about with Bioshock, but also with XCOM and Borderlands. Whether you're
Yeah.
talking about Nintendo working a little bit closer with Microsoft, whether you're talking about them working with Rockstar to some extent for L.A. Noire, Nintendo is starting to mend partnerships a little bit that they broke through just complete malfeasance for generations. I love that word.
That's a good word, yeah.
So that is good. But I think the term of the day, to use a Bush era quote that I will love until I die, the soft bigotry of low expectations surrounding third party on Switch really infuriates me. And it's nice to see for once the community lit up with frustration at Square Enix
Yeah,
because these games aren't coming. I really think part of the problem is that the community, I think, needs to hold Nintendo to a little bit of a higher standard.
sure.
And I think this is a conversation for another time entirely. But we're seeing that with the 3D All Stars debacle. We're seeing that with third-party support. We're seeing it in a lot of different ways. But third-party support is so integral to a system's health that we need to be pushing Nintendo to do better than they are.
Sure.
But like you were saying, there are great games on the platform, and it is a night and day improvement over not only the Wii U but the Wii and other systems. So I think you brought up an incredibly important point and a salient one, and one I agree with to an extent. Like I said, I found a lot of new favorite games here, but it's just not enough. And I'm not being an entitled fan. Sorry, I don't think you mean entitled towards your perspectives on a multi-billion-dollar company that is the most profitable media conglomerate in Japan. I don't
Yep.
think, I really don't think you can feel entitled in that respect. I think that's a ridiculous thing to levy. But I just think that it's frustrating when it shouldn't be.
Yeah. We'll just have to see how it goes from here. I mean, this is definitely a strange year, and Nintendo is not really bringing their A game, so we've kind of had to lean back on support like the 2K, collections and other third-party games that are coming out. But even when those aren't really coming, it just shows that the Switch is not having its golden moment, which is unfortunate because I do think that in an off year for Nintendo, that more third-party games could have come and been the system sellers. Not well, big hitters for the console. If there was a
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts collection, that would be one of the big Switch games of the year. And it would sell incredibly well because of that. If it's not competing with the Breath of the Wild 2 or, Bayonetta 3 or whatever. If they had put it out, if they had the confidence and started working on it earlier, it would have been one of the big hitters of the year for Nintendo Switch. And I think that's interesting to think about, that companies 4 years in don't think that the Switch has has the legs that it really does. It's very odd to me.
I've got a suggestion, and I don't know how you feel about it because I think you're absolutely correct. I think that Nintendo needs to consciously lean into third-party games the same way that I have the fucking PlayStation page for Marvel's Avengers open on my PS4 right behind my computer here.
Mm-hmm.
Sony leans into that as a big deal because Sony knows that they cannot release a Ghost of Tsushima or a Last of Us Part 2 at a high enough frequency over time to carry the ecosystem. They treat their third-party games as humongous deals because they are.
Yeah.
Nintendo should do the same thing. So here's my suggestion. And I was talking about this on Twitter a while ago. Nintendo should buy either minority or hopefully majority stakes in a team like Panic Button or Saber or a Virtuous, and just go to a company like Square Enix and say, look, we have this team. Their sole function is porting games to Switch. They are a porter house. They are our Blue Point.
Yeah.
We will publish Kingdom Hearts on Switch. We'll make a back-end deal with you. We'll publish this game. We'll farm it out to our team. This is our team. We promise you it will be a good port. This was not going to reflect poorly on you. The game is going to run properly. What can we do to get Kingdom Hearts on Switch?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are the types of moves Nintendo needs to make, especially when the power creep gets further away from them in the next gen.
Yeah. I mean, look, that is a fantastic, hopeful statement. But in all honesty, I don't think Nintendo cares.
No.
I was thinking about this a couple days ago, is that this, scarily enough, is one of the Switch's most successful years. And they're not doing jack diddly. They're riding on the
Right.
coattails of Animal Crossing, and they're going to boost it with straight ports of Mario games, and that is their year. But it's still one of their most successful, and I think that shows that Nintendo as a brand, as an ecosystem, people are so engaged in that they're still going to buy it no matter what. And I think that that doesn't do much for us in terms of hoping for the future for them to be making these, consumer friendly approaches to things, because they don't really need to. They're going to have their most successful year in a year that they don't get big third party support or big first party games. Who knows? But I really don't have high hopes for that. I like the sentiment, but
Well,
I don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, you're correct.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're correct. Someone said this on Twitter. I can't remember who they are, and I apologize deeply, but they said something that I think is so spot on that I'm just sending just mental brain waves out to this person to thank them for this thought. Nintendo is at their best when they are doing badly, but just well enough to put in the effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the 3DS, they turned the 3DS around
Yeah.
because there was potential there, because they were doing poorly, but they knew they could get the best foot back in front of them. Same with the GameCube. I know I fuck up. I do. I'm human. Believe it or not. I look like a god on camera, but I'm very human. The
Mm-hmm.
GameCube, the 3DS, the systems that Nintendo really threw themselves behind to give every possible advantage for success ended up being some of the best platforms they have.
And I do think that that extends to the early Switch. The early Switch
Absolutely.
life cycle is those third-party supports, the announcement, the double announcement of Doom and Wolfenstein 2 and Skyrim and LA Noire, but also consistent first-party support where they slacked or they, left the gates open the last few years, but then bam, hit the beginning of the Switch's life cycle with, a year and a half of just solid content that still stands up as some of the best that the Switch itself and, in my opinion, the generation has to offer, which is the fact that they weren't doing well with the Wii U and they had to bring themselves back to the good graces. But unfortunately, now they're riding on those good graces. So it's a sine wave of positivity and negativity. And who knows if we'll ever reach an equilibrium, which is another big boy word.
It's a
But
big boy word.
we'll have to see. Next year is definitely going to be interesting, and in my opinion, one of the most important years of the Switch is going to be us seeing how next year is handled in terms of for consistent first-party games, in terms of what happens with third-party support, because we're at the point where anyone who wants to make third-party games will have their games out by next year. These companies that are seeing the success for the Switch are either we're working on them and they're coming out, or we'll be working on them very soon and be coming out relatively soon as well. So next year, I think we'll be seeing how the Switch, where we're going to be able to predict where the Switch is going from there.
Well, I think that's a wonderful point to end on.
Good. Wow, I did an ending point. I'm proud of myself.
You ended on a fucking money point. That's a wonderful way to end. But folks, if you like listening to us posture about the future of various Nintendo devices, Card in the Corner, we had a discussion called Nintendo in the future of the company, or something to that extent, where we talk about beyond 2020 and what's left for the Switch, what's in the cards, if you will.
Mm-hmm. A card's in the card.
The cards of cards and the kings of clubs. Get the fucking Luigi poker game back on Switch. You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Get that on Switch. Wonderful content. But do you have anything else you'd like to add to this discussion?
I think I'm good. Go play. If you haven't played, look, here's some good, I'm going to end it on some good third-party ports. All right? Games that, if you haven't played, are great on Switch, are great games in general, and if you have a Switch, you should get them. Or In the Blind Forest. Play that game. Overwatch.
I haven't played it.
Not the best on Switch, but still very good game and runs fine on Switch.
Also, people who play Overwatch on Switch are ass, so if you want to feel good about yourself, play Overwatch on Switch.
Yeah. We should play some Overwatch on Switch sometime.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. BioShock. The whole BioShock trilogy is on Switch. They sell them as a collection. They also sell them separately, which is very strange. But it's good if you only want to get one of them, but just get all three of them. It's fine. Those games are absolutely fantastic. The collection is great, and I've heard that the ports on Switch are good. They're not fantastic, but they're good. Some bigger indie games. We got Firewatch. That's a great game. Pretty sure that's on Switch. I'm like 86% sure.
It's on Switch.
Okay.
100%.
100% sure. SteamWorld Dig. That's an indie game. It's not a third party game. It
was also on 3DS and Wii U.
Yes. Just play that game. The Skyrim port on Switch is actually pretty damn good. I've played most of my Skyrim on my Switch, and I think it runs fine. I like it a lot on there. Doom is actually a very good port on Switch. I
With
played through that.
gyro, it's money.
Yeah, I played through the entire game in tabletop mode in the back of my Latin class over the course of a couple weeks. Fantastic. But I mean, look, there are good third-party games on there, and they're just most of them just happen to be games I played elsewhere. So I'm hoping that I will be getting into more games. Like I've bought games like Bayonetta and like Little Nightmares that I haven't played yet that I own on Switch, and they're games that I could have played elsewhere first. But hopefully, I get to have a good first experience on Switch when I eventually, grind through my backlog and get to them.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll throw in a couple. Like I said, L.A. Noire, phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Wolfenstein 2, phenomenal. Fucking throw the Outer Worlds in there. I mean, at your own discretion, but I think it's wonderful. The Witcher, the Switch report is phenomenal. I'm saying the word phenomenal a lot. I gotta stop. I have purchased, yet to play, but very excited to play. It's at the top of my backlogs. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, also on
Oh,
Switch. I've heard that port is absolutely wonderful. Didn't say
yeah.
phenomenal. And that's just a couple. There are a ton. I've heard that the Borderlands games are excellent on the platform. I've heard that Dragon Quest XI-S is a great version of that game. There really is a lot of elegant third-party software to check out. Just not enough, not at the frequency, not at the level that I think it should be. And of course, there's so many goddamn classic games. The Devil May Cry games are great on Switch.
Yeah.
Fucking Capcom brought every Resident Evil game, including some I'd never heard of, to the
Capcom
platform.
Capcom is blowing their load on the Switch, and I love it. I
There
mean,
are
Castlevania collections. There's a ton of Mega Man collections. Basically, every Resident Evil game. It's pretty impressive what they've done.
there are at least in between the collections at least 15 to 20 Mega Man games in the
Yeah,
system.
it's bananas.
But the point is, guys, we're fucking just dragging this bitch out, aren't we?
Oh
I
yeah,
think we should
but I
end
think
this
that's
video.
fine. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. Watch our other videos.
I don't want to thank you very much, but I'll thank you a little.
Okay.
That's all you deserve for this one.
See you later.
Don't forget me.
Okay, I should put on some fucking socks. My toesies are cold.
Can you hear me?
Oh, hey.
I've got it.
Didn't see you there.
This is just a game theory, but I don't think you adequately wash the bottoms of your feet.